morning, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Buckchester. You know what I like to do on my show? I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today, we want to get you fired up about our guest, Dr. Meena Chintapalli, and we are so excited to have her on the show today. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Meena. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Good morning, Angela. It's a good opportunity for me to connect with the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, as is tradition here on the show, can you tell us a little bit about who you are for those people who are unfamiliar with you or unfamiliar with your work?
Yes. A lot of people can find me on YouTube, Meena Chintapalli on Educare. There are so many modules of my teaching and my messages. I've been a pediatrician since 1976. I came to this country, United States, and I'm a proud citizen, a country of opportunity. But when I came here, I went into pediatrics residency. I wanted to do something that nobody else has done. So it was easy for me to really pick up on antibiotics and diseases and how you cure them. But then what I saw in 1979 is that a child brought up in an abusive, aversive circumstances had global developmental delay. It was called psychosocial dwarfism. And so I dedicated myself for family bonding and protecting every mind and the physical health of a child, so that the family learns what it does if the child doesn't connect well, and how the love is a cure for everything. So that was my mission. I see that as a mission to bring out the best in every child. And that's what the meaning of Educare is to extract inherent powers. So as a pediatrician, that connection earned me many awards. Woman of the Year award from San Antonio Mayor's Commission on the status of women, 1 out of 15 in the town, 1994 to 95. Then Alamo Asian Chamber of Commerce for being the best professional and a community leader. American Medical Association Foundation gave me an award for professional excellence in leadership, taking the brain science, neurocognitive science of how an infant connects with the world through the environment and positive experiences and what does negative impact does. I took it into the community for teaching. So I became involved with as a master trainer in this subject with Texas Education for educating the children as well as for professional careers. It's called TECPDS anyway. And then I was chosen by Who's Who International, Who's Who America's Marquis Lifetime Membership Thiven since 2000. And then I've been a spiritual leader. I started a spiritual center. I did many medical missions, and this is me, that my basic community research has been how to connect the families with a relational bonding and teaching the parents how to really protect the brain and the heart, because no religion taught how the child should, how the aggression and the violence is a part of God's given. God always gives universal love, and that universal love connects the individual well So we won't see drug problems, we won't see violence, we won't see aggression, we will be intellectual and help create a human understanding that we are the highest in creation. We are the highest in creation, and we need to connect with the resources that are available there to better everybody's life. That is my mission. That's Dr. Chintapalli.
And how did you come about, excuse me to cut you off there, how did you come about the title Raising a Healthy Child? Did you find that the title of the book came to you first, or did it develop out of your writing?
It's my whole passion and mission has been a work since 79, I told you. Then I wrote my first book when I started having success, where there was, I cured so many ADHD children, and I prevented autism from really impacting. And when the kids were not talking at 5.5 years of age, and they were written off as, you're going to be an animal, you're not going to talk. I took it up as an advantage, and those testimonials are on my YouTube videos and modules. If anybody looks for Meena Chintapalli on Educare, those modules will come up in English as well as in my native language. Since I had a success with them, I wrote my first book, Brain, Mind, Psy Educare, that was published by University Press of America, because we need the adults to heal. We need the woman to be who is the primary caretaker, actually mother. A child always cries for a mother. Mom, when they're hurt. So I wanted the women who are usually abused, 80% have depression, and they need to heal. So I developed a healing, human values-based program for self-care. And so I taught that, and I also fallen in love with the PET scans. The Indian mythology talks about the third eye. The third eye is nothing other than the wisdom. And now the PET scans, the fMRIs now prove that if the center of the brain that sits on the eye sockets in between the eyebrows, which is the wisdom, the faculty of wisdom, the prefrontal cortex, if it doesn't work, we are angry people, we are very impulsive, we do not reflect upon our thinking, and we react upon our emotions. No self-control. So I've fallen in love with that. And so I used to teach them how you connect to that brain, even if you missed opportunities when you were growing up. So women empowerment, parent empowerment was important for me. And when they are educated and the child grew up with a lot of love, with the discipline and positive parenting. And so I created a curriculum that went into my first book that was published in 2004. It was not a self-publication. It was promoted by Oxford Press and Lanham Press and published by UPA, Roman and Littlefield Company. And then my second book, I had to wait until 2017 because I was running 2 clinics and I had many, as God says, you will be more the chosen instrument. Right? That's what Christianity teaches, what Hinduism teaches. So I had many life changes. My husband had 8 discs removed. He is a faculty radiologist and, a very lovable person. And I had to take care of him. And then, I lost cleaning services, because my maid broke her leg. So, so I had to wait until 2017.
Do all of that. Right.
The fact that being a mother, I had to get my kids married off. And when I finally decided to sell my clinics in 2016.
So Dr. Meena, how would you describe your book? Would you say that it's something that every parent needs to read? Would you say that it's someone before you have children, after you have children? Who's the target audience there?
So Raising a Healthy Child, is my latest after the series. I wrote prior to this one early Brain Sprouts from States to Traits. It was meant for global parents, because if every parent reads that, Or when they're planning for a child, they would know how to protect the ovum. They would know how to protect the sperm, because that's when the true care starts, no drugs, no alcohol. Because I certainly have seen, the bad effects of cocaine during pregnancy, deaf mutes and, chromosomal deletion syndromes. I took care of many, many children with disabilities. So everybody, every parent, even if you have had one child, they should read. Every parent can raise a child to bring the best out of them.
It is almost time for us to go to a break. But before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And how do we stay in contact with you?
Raising a Healthy Child, available on Amazon. You can reach me through mkchintapalli@yahoo.com, and I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere, at Twitter too, at Meena Sai 9. www.mychild-educare.com is my website.
Perfect. Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. I am talking with my guest today, Meena Chintapalli, and we are talking about her book, Raising a Healthy Child. Now, Dr. Meena, you definitely wanted to share a little bit more about healthy children and what we need to do there. But we just didn't have enough time because we had to go to break. Please, by all means, I want you to be able to tell us even more. You wanted to add some additional thoughts to that. Go ahead.
So health is not just a physical wellness, it's intellectual, psychological, social, emotional, and spiritual wellness. And you connect with the world for a lifetime in the first 3 years. It's like the brain is like little stars in the galaxy, but it is the experience that connects them through hard wiring, as we call it. And it can happen very well with the love, nurture, love and discipline, with a positive parenting. And the book is all about taking away the anxiety of being a parent and to connect with the frontal lobe, which sits on the eye sockets, which is a human property. None in the creation has it, only we have it, to make us reflect God. That's all I can say. So it is a multi-sensory integration nurture curriculum. That includes food, exercises, infant yoga, how to nurture the senses to be learning the science, math, and everything before they're 3. And this is a permanent part of the brain. It's like you have a light switch, and that is connected to the light, and everything is covered. You can break the wall and repair it. Whereas with a human brain, that hardwiring cannot be repaired if we don't do it right. We can always correct some, but it's robust when 0 to 3 years. It's called Love, Nurture, Multisensory Integration, and Fostering the Inner Strength of Every Infant.
So with that being said, how would you say that your book is relevant for what's going on in the world today?
Well, we see autism, 1 in 54 now. We don't need to see that. If we connect the senses very well, an infant should be able to talk by 12 months and complete syntax and a simple word by 18 months, and pragmatics by 2 years. We don't see that, and inadvertently, without our own knowledge, there are so many adverse factors in the society, and electronics has been a major issue that is causing autism and ADHD, and that was my hypothesis. I worked on that, and I worked on that for 36 years. And I've succeeded in creating this curriculum, which I patented in 2003. It brings the family love. It connects the communities together because the individual has to have the self-confidence, motivation. They're born with all of these. At the time of birth, newborn has a willingness to learn. They're looking for comfort. And if they don't have that comfort, they feel stressed, and instead of thriving, they survive. And that's when the senses withdraw. We need to promote these senses to connect with the world, and it can only happen with a good parenting, positive parenting, and learning where they can be going wrong, because nobody hates a child. They all want to do what is best as a parent, but the parenting skills come from the way they were parented. And they need to break away from that. They need to look at what is adverse for the senses. So every creation in life is for a purpose. And we should utilize every moment to stimulate those senses. Every newborn looks for love. They have robust memory. They have love, sympathy, empathy. They never knew how to hate themselves or others. And there's a bunch of cells, 100 billion cells, that connect with the world every minute, 250,000 cells per minute, 10,000 connections from cell to cell. There was no previous experiences or practical wiring. This is called hardwiring. And 90% is completed by third birthday, another 10% complete by fifth birthday. Although brain is malleable, plastic can rearrange, but the optimal hardwiring, like your foundation of a house, internal electrical wiring of a house, this happens 0 to 3. A child can survive, the child can thrive. If they feel trauma, if they feel neglect, if they lose relational bonding with the primary caretaker, they lose motivation and they start rejecting themselves. And this social, emotional learning is the undercurrent for intellectual learning, for emotional flexibility, for self-regulation, for linguistic abilities, and to make choices for eating right kind of foods and products. They all happen before the child is even walking. So if a child has been communicated to in 5 different languages, one parent speaking one language, another caretaker another language, they can learn multiple languages before they are 1 year old, because brain is like a digital analog, and the 5 senses are like the software. Short circuits happen when the software doesn't get fed in properly. And the environment where there is a multiple senses stimulated together scientifically, and when they are nurtured with love and direction for making right choices, infants grow up to be very strong and express their inherent strengths. There is a musician there is a scientist like Einstein and Newton, musician like Mozart. There are Michelangelos, there are philosophers, there are many that need to come out. But under the current circumstances of electronics being given to the kids before their brains are connected, that is not a way of learning, because they learn through practical experience. They have to have hands-on. They have to sit on the floor with the caretaker. They need they need to be spoken to. They need to be looked at, and they need to connect the right brain with the left brain. And if that fails, and if there is a trauma, they get arrested at the midbrain level called as amygdala, and which is an emotional brain. And they fail to make choices. If you start your feeding, for instance, at 6 months, with the bland foods like vegetable juices from kale, spinach, and green beans, and a little rice cereal. That infant, once they have accepted the food in 7 days, they're hardwired for green beans and broccoli and that kind of stuff. Kale. They make those choices. But if you keep adding cereal with a banana and sweet foods, carrots and everything as a first meal, they will seek sweets. So we have to be salt-free. So this is called hardwiring of the brain. And I clearly explain in my book, how to process the foods so they get a well-balanced meal. Why breastfeeding is important. What are all the herbs that are very, very essential through our foods? How do you get your retinoids and leptins and omegas? Omegas are very, very important. So your food, gut, and the brain and heart are connected. A child who can make healthy choices through infant yoga practices, even between 18 months to 2 years, will know how to go to a thinking chair with the music, take a few deep breaths or belly breathing, and can make right choices. If we teach them to make that, and they grow up to be reflective children. An example is in my practice, a 4-year-old, when the parents are very loud, parents come back and told me, thousands of them, that they say, you adults are being loud, let me go to my room and read a book and come back. When you calm down, call me. That's what they do. So if that is so, we don't have to see autism, we don't have to see ADHD, we don't have to see opium addiction, we don't have to see drug and alcohol addiction, we don't have to see abuse. But currently, there is the parents, 1 out of 4 women are abused physically, 1 out of 7 men are abused too. They're raising children, 50% of them to 70% of them, with some form of behavior or mental inadequacies, because that's how they grew up, and they're unable to move away from that thinking. But if they find the evidence-based medicine that supports practicing human values from very infancy, they grow up to be better children. And I have a hope that nobody intentionally wants to be bad, but it is the circumstances of their growth that made the behavioral changes. And there are about 345 or 354 NIS Judeo-Christian behaviors that we can talk about. No, God never taught us how to be bad. His creation is filled with love. You could see that in the ants. You could see that in the animals. They work in a herd immunity. They protect each other. But whereas human beings can eat healthy, can connect healthy, can be socially, emotionally stable, so their emotions can be fluid, smooth, shift from being aggressive to internal peace. And faith system is important. Be a good Christian, be a good Muslim, be a good Hindu, be a good Jew. You be good in your own faith. But it is the human value of love, connection, brotherhood of mankind is what we lost in the current generations. And it has come from using the free will for selfishness, whereas selflessness is what we need when we think about others. And we see that in the COVID situation, where people are fighting not to wear a mask, when we know we could have saved thousands and thousands when you wear a mask for protecting yourself and others. So selfishness gets and forgets, selflessness gives and forgives, and this is universal love. This is caring, this is nurture. And if every individual in the family is righteous, and there is a beauty in that character, and there will be order in the society, and there will be a peaceful world. And that was the hope. When I was retiring, I wanted to give back to the communities the teachings that helped thousands for 40 years in my life. And that's what is the essence of raising a healthy child, who is going to be healthy physically to prevent cancer, cardiac problems. The stress that we live in is causing the heart attacks very early in life, because there is a thing called as a Sakatobo syndrome, which causes the heart to fail, heart muscles to fail, and people die suddenly. And this comes from stress. And we are stressful when we are working. We are stressful when we are driving on the road. When we are stressful for the uncontrolled desires and not preserving the resources that God gave us. So we need to take care of a proper health that builds self-confidence, selflessness, love for the whole creation. And the research triangle has defined human creation as protecting the self, having a meaningful education, making a reasonable income, and helping the family, self, and the community. And there are good people, but it is uncontrolled desire that is causing the 7 sins of Christianity we talk about. And mostly we need to get rid of that, and that has its roots 0 to 3 years.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today and for telling everyone about your book, Raising a Healthy Child. I think that is so important that we do that, and I can definitely say that you have enlightened, inspired, and empowered someone today. Thank you for being a guest on. But before I let you go, if you could please remind everyone one last time the title of your book, where can we get a copy, how do we stay in contact with you?
Raising a Healthy Child on Amazon, Meena Chintapalli at yahoo.com, www.mychild-educare.com, and I'm on the social media. And my videos are available on YouTube, Meena Chintapalli on Educare.
Thank you again for being a guest on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. And listeners, thank you as well for spending time with us here today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember, you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on my show? I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. The scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about the book Prince Thiven's Abyss. Its author is Justine Kruse. Now, you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Justine. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you are here. Now, as is the fashion of what we do here, I'd love to give my authors an opportunity to introduce themselves to perhaps a few people out there that may be unfamiliar with your work or with who you are. So the first question is, what makes you you? Who is Justine?
Well, I'm no one in particular. I'm just a guy who really likes to write, and I'm from Missouri, and I just grew up in a family that really loves the arts, and really has a heart for the Bible and everything. So I just kind of led into writing my own fantasy stories that kind of kind of fed into that.
Now, is being an author something that you always wanted to do, or did you find that kind of developed a little bit later on in your life?
It's something that I mean, it definitely was not there from the very beginning, but I think pretty early on I realized I wanted to be an author. I think I always wanted to be involved in some kind of media, creating stories. When I was younger, I thought it meant being an actor, but I think as I got older, I realized I really liked to actually write the stories myself. So I think maybe around when I was 12 is when I really realized that I wanted to be a writer.
I like it. And I love asking that question because to me, each time I ask it, every author has their own version of kind of the same. Either you knew, younger, like you said, you were 12 years old. You knew when you were a younger person that this was something that you wanted to do, or it seems that I had no idea. It kind of just fell in my lap, and here I am, 50, 60, whatever, years old, and who knew I would be an author? But yet I think it still inspires people for that person who comes on and says, oh, wow, he was 12. Yeah, I was 13. Okay, maybe I'm on to something. So I appreciate your answering that question. Now, the title of your book, how did you come about the title? Did you find that the title came to you first and you wrote the story around the title? Did the title develop out of your writing? How did you choose?
So yeah, the title was definitely developed more out of the writing rather than the other way around. It's really based on Thiven, who is a character who my world has already been established in some ways, and so Thiven was already the name of something in my books, in my previous stories, and then I realized that I wanted that to be the name of one of the characters who started basically the nation in one of my books. And so I wanted this to be a very important character, so he ended up taking kind of the lead role in this book, and then, it being his abyss, Prince Thiven's abyss, it was really about where the story goes on. It's kind of on a symbolic and literal level of both the abyss representing the events in the book of them going into a literal abyss, but also a figurative abyss in the sense of them dealing with very difficult situations, very hard to swallow situations that might make them feel in a kind of abyss type of state.
Now, you choose to write with a combination, if you will, of faith plus fantasy. How did you determine that you wanted to take the genre of fantasy, sprinkle it, mix it in with faith and come up with your book? How do you do that?
I would say, for me, I really think fantasy is something that is just close to me. I've personally always been really been drawn to the very fantastical side of things, and I've just always noticed that, people tend to be drawn to these really spectacular stories that feel very distant from our world. And in that sense, it ends up often leading people to new ideas that, lots of writers and storytellers get to put in these ideas to people that are, really are able to reshape the way they think, and people don't even really think about it because they're just drawn in by a fun concept. But I really wanted to get into that and use that to kind of steer people in a positive and uplifting direction, something that I can really, inspire people and reach people by showing them elements of God in a more abstract sense.
And not to be offensive, to anyone, but there are some stories when we read some of the biblical stories, especially when people are having visions and dreams, that is something that is usually larger than life. It's something that's different. It's odd. It's curious, and if you imagine that in your head, you're going, wait, what? It has a what of what? Or it looks like what? Or it was a chariot with fire? Whoa! So I can see how, using your imagination to bring the picture, the story to life, is something that you're able to do. I know as a child, I tried my best to put the stories that I was reading as a kid, to life. I tried to picture those people doing those things in my mind's eye. So I can understand that. Now, did you find that you had a particular inspiration or prompting for writing Prince Thieves Abyss? Like, was there a particular portion of a different book or a particular thing that was going on in your life that said, yep, now is the time that I need to start writing this book?
I think it was, I don't know if there's a particular event in my own life that set it off, but it definitely came about through some thoughts about the world and, my relationship with God. And so I think I was kind of wrestling with this idea of, dealing with all the hard things that we're faced with in our attempts to stay with God and to try to understand Him better, and just the struggles that sometimes it really feels like He's putting us through. But at the same time, realizing that despite all that, there is a really intense love for us that He has, and I just kind of had this idea for a really unique way to illustrate that, and so I just wanted to create it in the form of a fantasy story that I thought was really interesting, and that I just thought could really reach people in a way that they may not have understood before.
I can understand that. Now, do you suggest that when reading your book that they read it from cover to cover, or can they pick up the book and just start reading anywhere?
Well, no, it's definitely something that you would want to read from cover to cover. You'll be pretty lost if you just pick up and start reading in a random chapter. It's definitely a very complex string of events in some ways.
And that's always nice to know. I know people personally who they're odd readers. They just sometimes will pick a chapter and just go, I like the number 2, so I'm going to start with chapter number 2. Or for that person who says, I'm just going to kind of drop the book and start reading where it falls. I mean, that works with some books, but not with all. So the fact that we should do cover to cover, thank you for that instruction there. Now, who is the main character? Like, what is his personality like? What are we going to learn about him? And does he have a main struggle or a main thing that he's trying to work through or achieve throughout the book?
So the main character, despite the name being Prince Thiven's Abyss, the main character is actually not Prince Thiven. The main character is a man named Koskor, and he is he's kind of a character who is coming from a place that he's really kind of discovering who he is through the process of the book, because he used to be an evil sorcerer, and he's in one of my previous books, he actually ends up changing his whole lifestyle and realizing that he just can't be the same person who he used to be. And so, his role in the story is that he's kind of dragged along on this quest with Prince Thiven, and through this, he's kind of forced to look through his life in a new lens and figure out why he's doing what he's doing and why he's why he keeps following Prince Thiven, and it's all supposed to kind of relate to his struggle with why he left his evil life in the first place and why he's choosing to follow God instead of returning back to his evil self.
Oh yeah, that sounds good. I gotcha. I like it. I like it. Now, would you say that your book is a good read for our young people, meaning like middle school and high school, or would you say that the book is a little bit more for the 18 and over crowd?
Well, I mean, I think it could kind of work for all. It doesn't have, as far as content goes, it's not going to have any content that should be super offensive to younger audiences, but it does, it's definitely something that I think can be very engaging to young adults, and even some older adults I think would find it very enjoyable.
Well, that is good to know. I love it when an author is able to, paint a picture and we're able to go along on the journey with them. That is always a fun thing. That, to me, is a really, really good book. So I love it. Well, Justine, it is time for us to get ready to go to break. But before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And, of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Okay, so yeah, you guys, the title is Prince Thiven's Abyss, and you can find copies on Amazon or Barnes & Nobles on their websites. You can also find the copies on the website for Ex Libris, and then you can get in touch with me on my Facebook page, White Rose Novels.
I love it. Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. You know who I am. I am Dr. Angela Tista. My guest today is Justine Kruse, and we are talking about his book, Prince Thiven's Abyss. And it is such an interesting sounding story. You probably want to pick up a copy as well. Now, Justine, you also have authored some other books. If I understand correctly, there are 2 other books. How do they connect to this book?
So these books they're all connected to the same world. They are, in some senses, they are all, they sometimes share some characters. However, you don't need to read one book to understand the other. They are all self-contained, but they each take place in this fantasy world that has a very deep history and, just a lot of similar elements that go into the stories to unite them together.
Okay, gotcha. So they can be independent reads. I like that. Now, what is the significance of the white rose in your novels?
So the white rose, it's a symbol that you'll find on all the covers of my books, and in some senses described in each of the novels. And it's really supposed to be a symbol that is a common theme throughout all the books. And the rose itself comes from thorns that are growing up that are all black, but the rose itself is white. And it's intended to kind of illustrate this theme that even though we may come from really dark, twisted, corrupted things, that we can actually still grow, white and pure from it. So it's a very symbolic, treatment of kind of God being able to make something beautiful of what is actually dark and, difficult.
Now, what separates your book from other fantasy books? There's always going to be that person out there that says, yeah, what makes your book so special? So here's an opportunity to answer that question for that person. What makes your book unique or different?
Well, I think in recent years we've kind of seen fantasy stories take a real different turn in their approach. They've become really they're gritty and they're dark, and they really kind of deal with stuff that is it oftentimes to me feels very morally corrupt, and it doesn't there aren't very many heroic figures. There's not a lot of inspirational stuff. It just kind of throws you into the thick of a really bleak situation, and at least in what I've experienced recently. But I think my book kind of plays against that, in that it does set people into these really gritty worlds, and it does confront them with some really hard situations that we might experience in real life. But at the same time, it has a very romantic optimism at the heart of it that is, much harder to find in modern fantasy. And I think it also comes with a message that is very strongly Christian, but it is not pushy in the way that the Christian side of it is portrayed, and it is not meant to it's not one of those silly pamphlet things that kind of tell you, have you accepted Jesus Christ into your heart at the end. It's much more involved and much more, it really tries to get you to feel from a certain perspective rather than just telling you from one side.
I like that. I like that. Now, for so many of the authors that I have on, there is something personal that they have added to their book, though they may not name it the same thing, call it the same thing, or even put their name on it and say, yep, this happened to me, unless there's an interview. So I do like to ask, though, did you find that you were able to add any personal elements of yourself to the book, or any of your personal background as far as your faith is concerned? Were you able to wrap or kind of mix any of that into the book at all?
Well, sure. I mean, it's definitely all based on my experiences in some way or another, whether it be just my personal wrestling with my faith in God and trying to understand that, but also a lot of the world building is very much based on my experiences as a child. I just kind of grew up in a family that did lots of adventuring and stuff. So me and my cousins and siblings would oftentimes we'd go adventuring in the woods, and we'd we kind of created our own adventures, and a lot of that really inspired me to it just kind of gave me a sense of what it's like to be out there in the wild, the way that these fantasy books are kind of supposed to immerse you. And then, I grew up in a strong Christian household that really, really instilled in me a strong faith that I really wanted to incorporate into these books.
I love that. Now, do you have any other stories that you plan to write in the future? What's on the horizon for you? Now, I know that COVID is going on, and a lot of people are saying, well, I'm going to write because we're still quarantining, or we're working from home, and it's been a perfect opportunity because I don't have to travel, or my time has changed a little bit differently, and I'm able to write more. But that wasn't necessarily your plan. How has COVID affected your plan? And flip side of the coin, are you going to be able to write any new things in the future?
Yeah, well, I mean, I personally don't really feel like COVID has affected me much. It's fortunately, writing is something that you can get done in your house in complete isolation. But yeah, as far as my own books, I have quite a few planned. Just in this world alone, I've already started, I think, 2 other books in the same world, and I have quite a few more coming after that. And I intend to branch out quite a bit into some other genres, possibly some sci-fi, and I want to kind of reach out in lots of different entertainments that I can.
Absolutely. Now, I want to shift gears just a little bit, and I love to pick the brains of the authors that are on for those people that are aspiring. Some people are ready, they just need that little extra oomph to get them going, and still others are still trying to figure it all out. With that being said, I know that every person who writes has the best environment that's the most conducive for them. Would you say that you're the type of person that needs the peace and quiet in order to write? Do you mind people around the hustle and bustle of the day? What's the perfect environment or time of day for you when you're writing?
Well, yeah, I would definitely say quiet is best. I don't think I necessarily have a particular time of day I like to write. I prefer to, I just like to think throughout the day, and whenever I really get inspired, I like to sit down and try to get as much of my thoughts down onto paper as I can.
Now, did you ever experience writer's block? If you did, what did you do to get unstuck?
I think to a small degree I have. I don't think I've ever been completely stuck on where I wanted to go, get the story to go, but I've definitely had moments where I wasn't sure exactly how to get it from one point to the next. And in those times, I've really found what's best is just push through it, just start writing, because, if you sit there and do nothing and just hope the inspiration is going to come to you, that really does not work. It's really best to sit down and let your mind wander, start typing, and then you can always go back and, clean it up if you realize that what you had wasn't very good. But yeah, if you just stop and just hope that the inspiration is going to hit you, then that's a good way to just, end up doing nothing for a few months.
I can definitely understand, because that being stuck turns into almost just a stop. If I'm hearing you correctly, where it's like, I don't know, and then before you know it, the project's over because you just couldn't keep going. But that freestyle writing, just get it out, whatever it is, and fix it and connect it later. I like that bit of inspiration. I love it. I love it. Now, last few questions for you, and one is that what is the main, or one of the main takeaways that for someone who picks up a copy of your book, what do you want them to feel or know or understand when they get to that last page and they're done reading the book?
Well, what I think I'd really like them to feel is, one, I'd obviously like them to feel like they, just read a really fun, fantasy story. But I think as far as on a more spiritual sense, I'd really like them to feel like they understand God in a sense more. I think the book is really designed to try to help you see things, see God at a different angle, and I think it's, oftentimes we feel a sense of abandonment when we're struggling, when we're going through hardships. But I think this book is really kind of can help people to understand how, even though they might feel abandoned, that God is still very present in their lives and that He still has a deep care for everyone.
I love that. And what a beautiful note to end the show on. God is still there and it has a deep love for everyone. Amen to that. I love it. I love it. Well, Justine Kruse, thank you so much for spending time with us here today, and for not only telling us about your book, but giving us a bit of inspiration too, that we can be entertained, but we can also be informed at the same time. And I really like that. Before I let you go though, if you could please one last time remind everyone, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Okay. So the title is Prince Thiven's Abyss, and you can find it on Amazon or the Barnes & Noble's website, as well as the Ex Libris website. And you can get in contact with me through my Facebook page, White Rose Novels.
I love it. Thank you again, Justine, for being a guest on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Yep, thank you.
And listeners, thank you for spending time with us as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend it with me, and I appreciate that very much. I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember, you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.